This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 3rd of December 2019, and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are.
Yes.
In the Star, RUTO troops retreat to Kajiado to plan for BBI. Daily Nation, pain as top students miss dream schools.
Yep.
And in the Standard, old giants scoop top KCPE stars.
Still a little bit of BBI left over.
Yes. And I
Yes,
think there's
yes,
more
yes.
of this to come.
Absolutely. So,
In the Star.
in the Star, KAMATUSA. These are the Kalenjins, the Maasai, the Turkana, and the Samburu people are meeting. Their plan is to meet at Maasai Lodge in Kajiado County on Friday to Saturday. And the agenda is twofold: to discuss the BBI recommendations and to chart a way forward for that community, as well as to define the 2022 succession plan
For themselves,
as they
right?
see it for themselves.
Yeah.
And it says here that the
Absolutely.
group opposes a referendum but wants the proposals to go through Parliament.
Yes, yes, yes. And presumably, I think the thinking there is that they can control the
Yeah.
outcome
At the House.
Through
Yeah.
Parliament.
in the House
Yeah.
as opposed to
Letting it get to the ground.
letting it get to the ground.
Does it make reference to whether DP himself will be there, or the troops are meeting with
Yes,
him?
yes. I no, well, yeah. It makes it suggests
Suggests
that
he might
DP
show up.
could be there. The other
Yeah.
thing it says is that former Bomet governor
Yeah.
Isaac RUTO is also planning to hold a parallel meeting with those who have a contrary opinion
Oh my goodness.
to the
Kenyans.
Team DP squad.
But I guess my question is, what discussions would they have about BBI?
Listen, I like
What are they going to discuss?
I like that they're grouping together.
Yeah.
In the same way Uhuru led his people
Absolutely.
in Sagana the other
Yeah.
day.
Get
But
on it.
also because Ruto is a strategic actor. He knows his goal is 2022, and so he knows he needs to get ahead of this conversation.
Yeah.
Perhaps what he needed was his own version of BBI to counter whatever he's
BBI,
opposing.
yeah, that's
so
true.
in the absence of what you're opposing,
But-
people
Yeah,
maybe
get
lean towards BBI.
get in front of it, have your own discussion. Yeah.
But let me ask, guys, isn't the DP making an error here? Because
Tell us.
I think this is an irrelevant meeting.
No, it's
Because, and I'll tell you why. Because the BBI report that was launched
Yes.
last week Wednesday is a decoy. That is not the real
we're
BBI.
being distracted.
Yeah, and so he's being distracted. Now he's going to spend so much money and time discussing recommendations which are really not
There.
what are going to be the final
Yeah.
recommendations.
Which is why we were saying they should come up with their own agenda for how
True.
they want to chart between now and 2022.
Yes.
However, I do think it's important that every community in the country finds a way to have their own discussion around BBI.
Yeah.
If we're all
Yeah.
going to buy into it, these KAMATUSA guys, I really like that name.
Yeah.
GEMA, every community needs to, put their foot down and say, this is what we want brought to the table.
brought to the table. Well, we do have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves whether it is topical or speculative, whether it is repetitive or groundbreaking, and whether it is attentive or just plain lazy.
Yes.
Attentive or effective?
Effective,
attentive,
attentive,
alright.
thoughtful. No, I'm using synonyms.
Synonyms.
my dear. So we
Well,
can.
I think
It's a
I like
topical
I think we
headline.
park it
Yeah.
for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay,
Relevant.
relevant. And the
All
Daily
right.
Nation. So I think we can do the Standard and the Daily Nation
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
So we have pain as top students miss dream schools, and in the Standard, all giants scooping the top KCP people.
Stars, yeah.
So basically, Standard yesterday also had a similar headline.
Similar headline, yes, about the top
Yesterday it was
students.
Kenya's most popular high schools. And then it told us, that most students were leaning towards Alliance, Pangani,
Yeah, the top 18.
yes, all those. And now today they're telling us
That the old giants, that the schools that we know as the oldest
The
schools
Kenya
in the
Highs,
country.
the-
Yeah.
that one was a
alliances.
repetition.
It was a
There was
repetition.
no originality there. But for the Daily Nation, they are telling us that there's some people who were allocated, who didn't get the schools that they had
Yeah.
intended to get.
Yeah.
And yet they got the marks
Exactly.
to deserve to go to those schools.
Yes, so there was a mismatch between the school that you had put down and the one that you were eventually placed.
Yeah.
Some were actually placed in the opposite gender school. So a girl placed in a boys' school, so that's a glitch in the system.
Yeah.
And also they reported that the Education Ministry has placed about 30,000 candidates in schools that they hadn't chosen. And Magoha gave the parents and kids a bit of a scolding.
Yeah.
And he basically is like, listen, a majority of the students who did really well have picked the 18 elite national schools. Yet there were about 85 new schools, or not new, but rehabilitated, upgraded
That
schools.
a lot of people didn't select.
Yes. So we have a case here, simple economics, your demand is too big for the supply that we have.
However, do you blame people if you're told that the threshold to go to one of the top 18 schools is to get 400 and whatever it is, and you get that, of course you would apply
but then you
for
had
one of
a
the good
lot
schools.
of kids getting that over 400, and then you have a school like Alliance that only has about 300
spaces with 100,000 applicants.
Exactly.
This actually does scare me for the students for next year.
The pressure is up.
The pressure is really up because the kids did amazing this year.
But
so
if
what's
we have
gonna
these
happen?
other 84 or so rehabilitated schools, the idea is to turn them into what will become some new giants.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of schools that are reputable, that are desirable for well-performing students to go to. And that's a challenge for the government as well as parents going forward for this year.
Great.
I
So
would say
both of these are very topical given exams and placements.
Yes.
But we are tossing the standard for repetition.
For repetition.
So we toss the standard.
Yeah.
And then we have between the STAR, we have RUTO and KAMATUSA, and we have PAIN as top students mainstream
Not particularly enthused by either.
Yeah, I think that the STAR is a little bit too wordy for me, and the Daily Nation
also a bit too wordy.
It's a little bit wordy.
I will pick the STAR.
Okay.
Just because there's intrigue.
Who will second you? Jude.
Somebody second me.
You know what? I will second you based on our Twitter followers who all voted for the STAR.
Fantastic. Then we give it to the STAR. Toss that.
We're on to something. There you have it. We have our winning headline from the STAR. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria that we use. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes. In the Nation.
Yeah, Victor Ndula.
We have Victor Ndula, who's drawn a very interesting cartoon here of Mike Mbuvi Sonko, governor of Nairobi. So he is he's been depicted as a toad in his bling. Some sunglasses there, but it's pouring. The clouds are heavy, pregnant with rain. Nairobi is flooded. But there's a water. Is that a water lily or what is that?
Yeah, I think it's a water lily.
A water lily that he's balancing on. And there's a caption there that says, "If a frog becomes a king, he will make the whole kingdom muddy." Mehmet Murat Ildan.
Yeah.
This
was
you had a very good
It was
interpretation
good.
there.
I think it's in reference to the crazy rains that we're experiencing right now.
Exactly. But the only person who is well equipped
to survive
is this frog that they're calling
Sonko. And you know that he has webbed feet.
Exactly. So he can survive it, but the rest of Nairobi is drowning. People's slippers are
I thought floating. So I actually Googled that quote and I found another quote by the same guy and it says, "Frog in the mud is happier than the man because it has no ambition to reach the stars."
Exactly.
And I feel like that is so apt when I think about Governor Mike Sonko.
Mike Sonko,
he's not my governor.
And mind you, on a day
you're a Nairobi resident.
And it's adding doom to gloom when he's added the parking fees,
400 shillings,
400 shillings. However, it was part of a law that came into, and it was enacted in the September 25th or something like that.
What a gangster.
Great cartoon.
What a gangster. And then we have Gado. So Gado has drawn a table, an office table with a phone and a BBI file, a red one. But in the bin, a red dustbin, is Chapter 6 of the Kenyan Constitution, we presume.
Chapter 6 being on leadership and integrity.
Yeah, so the BBI report heavily referenced a lot of things which are in Chapter 6, values, ethos, leadership, integrity. And what basically is being said here by Gado is, look, we already put these things into the Constitution 2010. And why are we talking about them again? And yet they're already in the Constitution. We ought to be operationalizing them.
And I think that was one of the things that the International Center for Policy and Conflict noted was that BBI is just redoing the things that we failed to do with the 2010 Constitution. So that BBI is actually just a waste. We're wasting time, we're wasting money when we should just enact the things that were initially there.
We had set out to do.
I don't know if I agree. I think it's very pessimistic.
As usual, Gado has been having a tough quarter four.
Gado, it's Drinksember. Join us.
I kind of like it though.
I like it, but we can
toss that for now. Let's toss it.
Yeah.
All right. So
finally,
in VStar, we have a really huge Matangi here, bloated. The captions and there's somebody there who's blowing air
like he's an inflatable
into him, like he's an inflatable
doll of some sort.
Yeah. And the caption says, politicians are making Matangi larger than life. The reference here is the last weekend's or last Friday's rally in Kirinyaga, where he and the PS for Interior brought together a lot of MPs and they had some sort of initiative in Kirinyaga.
Yeah, you guys know how I feel. Matangi for president 2022.
Yeah. So we had a headline yesterday, actually, sort of saying, you know, are they grooming him for president? I didn't completely agree. I thought that we're being distracted away from something. And maybe that's what Ozan is saying, that these politicians are making him larger than life. Because what do you do with a balloon? Eventually it pops, or someone pops it, or something happens.
And that is the nature of politics, actually, right?
Yes. Everything is confrontational and...
But particularly with the presidency, you know, the president always needs somebody like Matangi, somebody who he fattens up, somebody who can take up all the blame so that it doesn't get to the president.
And that's been his role,
and that's been his role. And he's all too happy to take it. I hope that
he's smarter than that.
I hope that he doesn't have a grand fall. I hope Uhuru remains loyal to him.
So what do we think? Between the Sonko frog or...
Sonko frog.
Sonko.
100%.
So there we have it. Dula gives us our winning cartoon from the Daily Nation. What is our final thought?
And now our final thought. Today it is inspired by a book entitled The Lies That Bind, Rethinking Identity, by a man called Kwame Anthony Appiah, written in 2018. So Kwame Appiah is a British Ghanaian philosopher, cultural theorist and writer whose focus is on political and moral theory, the philosophy of language and mind, and African intellectual history. I thought that was very interesting. We need more people who focus on those things.
Yes. I'm also very happy that we have a black author.
I know, true, talking about anthropology. So he's currently a professor of philosophy and law at the New York University. So this book is actually a collection of lectures. It's not a book that was written intended to talk about identity, but it's a collection of lectures that Appiah made in London, Glasgow, Accra, and New York, all in 2016. And altogether, this book is a survey on the concept of identity, which he has clustered into a chapter on each of the things that he calls the basis of modern identity. So we have creed, which is your religion. We have country, which is your national identity, your class, your color, which is racism, and your culture. So those 5 things that he calls the basis of modern identity. So he asks us in this book to rethink identity, and he asks essentially, what is identities and why do they matter? And he says that the main message is that we are living with legacies of ways of thinking that took their modern shape in the 19th century. So the 19th century is the beginning, the 1800s, all the way to the end, just the beginning of the 1900s. And so at this time, we have slavery, we have World War I, World War II, we have the Industrial Revolution, we have colonialism. But he says it's time to subject that old way of thinking, the 19th century way of thinking, to what we have now in the 21st century. And so he says, we often think that identity is this personal thing, that it's about me or it is about I. But he says, or he argues rather, that identities shape our world. They shape our struggles, they shape our hopes and dreams, and they are very social, and they're things that we share with countless other people. And so he says that taking those 5 categories, he explores how identities are created by conflict, but then are crafted by confusion. And so some of the things he gives us as examples are, he says, religion isn't about beliefs primarily. He says that the idea of nationalism, sorry to the Christians, he says that the idea of nationalism actually doesn't make any sense. He says that our ideas on racial thinking are based on flawed science from white people. And he says that class is not about being upper or lower. And he says that we will start to see our situations as individuals clearer if we start to question these mistaken identities, and they'll begin to change how we think about ourselves, but also our communities as a whole. I think it was a fantastic book.
It had very interesting tidbits.
A good book indeed. And so if identity politics and the polarization of the world trouble you, this is a book worth picking up. You will definitely get a deeper understanding of how identities form. And what he tells us is that identity is a set of labels and rules ascribed to people. But they also, identities, particularly of an ethnic nature, also emerge through a concept known as instrumentalism. And that's basically where a group of people, let's say some of the political elite, come together and for the sake of advancing a political agenda, acquiring power, they end up, bringing a whole group together. And I'll use the cliche of the Kalenjin community, which, before, and even the Luya nation, as we know them today, before the colonial era, and even during the colonial era, the ties between a lot of those groups in the Luya nation, for example, some of those communities is just completely different. They don't even share a common language. But what the politicians have done over time is to create a common homogeneous identity amongst them for the sake of showing up at the ballot, getting the numbers, and
for their gain.
and acquiring political power. And that's an example of a lie that has been told and that has really stuck.
Going back to the title. Going back to the title of the book.
Lies that bind, particularly in the Kenyan political context. And that's just something I wanted to bring out. Something local, give a local perspective.
I think that's what I took
about how ethnic identities are actually constructed. They don't emerge so much entirely out of a spontaneous order.
But yet we're still so aligned to them.
And we're very aligned to them. But yet again, that's a lie that binds.
And he's telling us to wake up to that lie, to that confusion, and really rethink what our identity means.
So Apia in one of the other chapters also explores class, right? So status and wealth are usually some of the indicators of what class is, right? So I'll do a distinction quickly between status and wealth. So wealth is often private, whereas the things you acquire, the richness, what's in your account is often kept to yourself, right? And it's even more than that. It has cultural attributes and whatnot. However, the status is often linked to that ostentatious display. It's about social hierarchy. You're doing it to show one's peers, this is where I have reached. This is where I am, and it's something that came up sort of as the Industrial Revolution took hold. So those that were perceived as lower working class, so you didn't own land. So you applied sort of your labor and your work and to gain money, and so it created this new social class called the nouveau riche or the newly rich, right? And they built their fortunes and started to gain access into the elite club. So what was normally left for the lords and the barons and whatnot, now suddenly I could gain access into. And they didn't just want wealth, they then also wanted status. And so this modern day, now when we come into this shift, there's this discrete wealth which is replacing visible displays of money so as a new status symbol. And they're calling it, or he calls it sort of this aspirational class. And this aspirational class focuses on building knowledge, cultural capital, and instead of investing in just material items, so the big boats and the big mansions and whatever, the new elite are investing in education and health, and they're helping them gain the social status, the access to that social status. And so they're not just saying we have it, we're owning it, we're owning those things that you guys want, we own them, right? And then he talks about how poverty, real poverty, is basically about social isolation, but also the material deprivation. So the reason why you can be upper class and still poor is because you have friends, you have money, so you benefit from the money in their pockets and the networks that they have. And so that's why you can find some upper class people who really aren't not a cent in their pockets, right? And then he discusses something really interesting on meritocracy. So meritocracy arose as a system intended to crush the class system, so that you became wealthy of your own right through hard work, through talent, and it's not just because of where you were born, not your birthright. However, what dismantles this is inheritance. So the success that many hand down to their kids sort of dismantles that, so that you're still finding that there are people who are talentless but have this step up in life, right? And he says there's little incentive to change such a system, unfortunately, right? So I found that very interesting.
Great book.
You're very good.
A lot of food for thought on that.
So on a day where we had a winning cartoon from the Daily Nation and a winning cartoon from the Star, I want to leave you with this. Appiah teaches us that identities come first with labels and ideas about why and to whom they should be applied. Second, your identity shapes how you should behave. And third, it affects how other people treat you. So we've seen, like when you're talking about ethnicities, dominant identities can mean that people will treat you as an authority.
Yeah.
So some are identified as being the ones who know how to do this and this and this.
Yeah.
However, they're subordinate identities, and these can mean that your interests are sort of ignored or abused.
Yeah.
You're seen as a lesser. You're not in that group of dominant, right? However, we must continue, and what he asks us to do is to challenge these assumptions that lead to the unequal distribution of power.
Oh, definitely.
So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pang Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a good evening.